Hey everybody, Stephanie with the Machine Gun Nest here, and I have a new legal update for you. So right now, as I'm making this video, it's in the beginning of April, and a lot has happened, honestly, within the last few days. So the first thing I want to talk about is something that affects us as dealers, and it is the ATF finally removing their zero tolerance policy. And it's so funny because anything that's agenda driven, and it happens on both sides, is the usage of these euphemisms, these sanitized rewordings in order to make something sound less nefarious than what it actually is. And the zero tolerance policy was actually called the Enhanced Regulatory Enforcement Policy. Sounds really great, doesn't it? But in reality, it was terrible. Essentially, under this policy, which was enacted under the Biden administration, FFLs were having their licenses revoked for minor clerical errors. Now, the firearms industry is a paperwork-driven industry. And of course, whatever we're doing, we want to do well with that, of course. But making a minor clerical error because we're humans is something that can just sometimes happen. And it doesn't mean that there's criminal intent behind it. And 99.9% of the time, these clerical errors had no bearing on the actual meaning of what was in the paperwork or affecting the transfer in any meaningful way overall anyway. Not that I'm making excuses for paperwork errors, because we should always strive to do our best, but it was tremendously unfair to revoke licenses from thousands of dealers across the country for these minor paperwork errors. So this was actually just revoked. I'm going to read to you from an ATF presser from April 7th, just a few days ago. Listen to this. It says the Enhanced Regulatory Enforcement Policy, aka the Zero Tolerance Policy, was a strategy announced in 2021 that set more stringent criteria for industry operations, compliance, inspections to identify licensees with certain qualifying violations. As of today, so this is April 7th, this policy will be repealed and industry ops inspections will no longer be held to these previously set guidelines. This is such a relief, because if you made an error just on one letter, I'm not even talking on the serial number anywhere, you could be in violation of this policy and have your license revoked. It's ridiculous. I'm going to read to you a quote from our AG, Pamela Bondi. She said, this Department of Justice believes that the Second Amendment is not a second-class right. The prior administration's zero tolerance policy unfairly targeted law-abiding gun owners and created an undue burden on Americans seeking to exercise their constitutional right to bear arms. It ends today. So thank you, Miss Pam Bondi. We appreciate that. And then, interestingly, I'm going to read to you a quote from Kash Patel, and this is going to transition to the second topic I want to talk to you guys about. He said, today's repeal of the zero tolerance policy and the comprehensive review of stabilizing brace regulations and the definition of engaged in the business marks a pivotal step toward restoring fairness and clarity in firearms regulations. So that was said by the prior acting director, Kash Patel. So before I get into that topic, though, I want to talk about why this zero tolerance policy was actually terrible. You might be hearing this. You might be watching this video and thinking, paperwork violations are a massive deal. We need to keep guns off the streets and blah, 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 all those regular talking points. But I want to kind of reframe it to you like this. If the speed limit is 65 miles per hour on the highway and you go 70 miles per hour to pass somebody and then return to that speed limit, I guess in essence, you did break the letter of the law, but it's not something in reality that could even be applied, because you need to go a little faster than that to maybe pass a truck who's driving in an unsafe manner. I don't know any police officer that would pull somebody over for going 70 miles per hour in a 65 in order to pass a truck. So I kind of liken it to that, although it's an imperfect analogy. But yes, we want to strive for perfect paperwork all the time, but it absolutely should not result in a revocation of your license. So this on April 7th was said by Kash Patel. And then something kind of interesting happened since then. I don't know if Kash quiet quit or what the story is, but he has now been replaced as the acting director of the ATF by a really great sounding guy named Daniel Driscoll. And he's currently the U.S. Secretary. He's the Army's secretary. So he's in charge of the Army under Pete Hegseth. I want to share a little bit about this guy, and I have some questions too, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the matter. So it was interesting, Kash Patel's appointment to the ATF anyway, because he was set to lead both the FBI and the ATF. Originally, I thought, wow, this is really cool. Kash Patel is super pro 2A. He's somebody that actually understands. I think he shows a lot of promise in being a great leader for the ATF and maybe enacting these necessary reforms in the industry, maybe even starting to build bridges of good faith between the industry and the ATF. But according to some sources who wished to remain anonymous, they said Kash wasn't really showing up to work. Now, I don't blame him. How are you going to run the FBI and the ATF at the same time? I'm disappointed because I was hoping to see Kash really be a driving force behind some of these changes that need to happen within the ATF. I was hoping to see him stick around a little bit longer at least. While many of us in the industry were hoping for that place to just be utterly gutted, I was unhappy to see him transfer 1,000 agents from the ATF to the FBI. And I'm unhappy to see that, he's not going to be there anymore, but I get it. It's leaving a lot more questions than answers. So the new guy who's been put in place, this Daniel Driscoll, I want to share a little bit about him. He sounds like a total boss. He got his bachelor's degree from UNC Chapel Hill and then got his JD from Yale. He's a decorated soldier. I mean, I'm going to read to you some of his medals. He received the Army Commendation Medal. He received a Ranger tab. He received the Combat Action Badge. And so he's clearly a really intelligent, really accomplished leader. Now, the interesting thing is, and here are my questions, what will it be like to have this Pentagon official running a federal law enforcement agency? I'm not sure about how okay that is. It's something I need to learn a little bit more about, which I want to share with you all. I don't know. I think that aspect of it isn't necessarily a good look. As somebody who supports small government, limited government, I'm not exactly thrilled to see a military official running a federal law enforcement agency, even though I don't like this federal law enforcement agency. So it's one of those things where if you're going to ask me what I think about it, I think that time will tell. I think it's still a little bit too early. I think this guy is set up in a similar position to Kash where, he's already the Secretary of the Army, and so I don't know how much time he's actually going to have to run the ATF as well. But there's always time to go in there and gut it. So come on, Daniel Driscoll, do us right here. So I'm going to let you know as things develop. I'm going to keep you updated. And if you have any thoughts about this, please share them in the comments, and I look forward to seeing what you guys say. And I'll see you at the range.